welcome back to talking about Splatoon 3. We're actually going to be doing that for a while. I have quite a lot of videos coming up for that. Upload schedule's still going to be a little... we'll figure it out. But yeah, more stuff's coming up. What for now? The meta sucks. And I think it's time I kind of talk about that for a little bit. So that's what we're going to do. So, currently... the meta revolves around a few specific weapons. The main ones are Blaster and 52. These are going to be your main slaying options. They're pretty good right now. People already dislike them. Why? Well, 52 is probably one of the most randomly overtuned weapons in the game. And it's got a wall, and wall is annoying to fight when it's not attached to an ink-hungry weapon. It's annoying, and 52 is not ink-hungry. Blaster is very strong, because its blast radius is relatively solid rather than being a weak point like it used to be. And it's fairly quick to go into squid form. They made it a little better in a patch, but it still, feels a little overtuned at times, or at least there's not enough other powerful weapons to make this one feel weak at times, particularly midline-wise. Mid-range weapons have typically been toned back quite a bit. But outside of that, there's typically a few other things we'll see. First off, there's been a lot of roller winning, because roller does synergize very well with the meta, and I will get to that in a bit. But roller is mostly being used by, just a few people. It's not the most common weapon, but it is very good. But besides that, we're going to see Vacuum 96, which has the job of getting all the short-range guns in. It covers, the range disadvantage. It paints very well, and then this is what gets your close-range weapons in. And they start killing things, and if you fill the vacuum, it will cap the zone. Awesome. Very fun. And then you are going to either pair that with a pencil, a tri-stringer, or an E-liter. If you pick the E-liter or tri-stringer, you're probably picking a tri-slosher with it. If you pick pen, you're probably playing 9652 blaster. Oh my god, yeah, fun. Right, so it's easy to look at this meta and go, oh my god, I don't want to fight all these. I'm tired of pencil. I don't like E-liter. Hiding is hard. I don't want to deal with vacuums all the time from the 96. I don't like fighting 52. I don't like fighting blaster. Roller is annoying. Tri-slosher is annoying. I hate this game. Right? That's very simple. Here's the larger thing, though. Right. The meta's kind of just shifted. See, before, when we had, these midline weapons, it was very important to be able to take space and utilize the mid-range poke to find openings. Finding fights was very important, and these weapons had to mechanically execute properly in order to get picks. The better weapons were still ones that were more overtuned at doing it, but, S-Blast in its prime still had a pretty small short-range mode and burst bomb combo radius. And if you weren't good at that, you weren't going to be good at the weapon. Range Blaster still had a spacing requirement. Stamper had everything. Stamper had to do... even Squeezer, which I've probably complained about the most back in the day, had a pretty solid aim requirement for the range value you needed to be on. Stuff like that, There was a good amount of potential for things to be messed up when you went for a play. That isn't really the same anymore. If the weapon gets close enough, you probably just die. If the gal gets in and paints over you and, chucks its wall or, any combination of the such, if the gal gets close enough, you're gonna die. If the blaster gets close enough, it has a very hard time missing. I said roller synergized with the meta because, well, yeah, guess what? If the roller gets in close enough, it ain't missing either. Neither is a tri-slosher. You have all these short-range weapons, the 96 vacuums to get them in all the time, and it's still a mid-range two-shot, but, I don't think it's that big a deal. And then you have long-range backlines that, why is pen, seen as weaker than E-liter? I mean, I don't know if it actually is, probably is a little bit, but, gap's not that large, but why? Well, because pen used to be really good with midline meta because it would combo with things. It would get, a Zuka shot would hit somebody, and then it hit him with a pen, or a range blaster AoE, or a burst bomb, or a bucket shot, or a squeezer shot, and then pen would kill. Pen don't do that anymore. Pen now paints lines for the rest of the team to go in. It is now much less fun. Pen has to kill by comboing with pen, most of the time. That's less fun. E-liter doesn't have to worry about comboing with people. Instead, just run enough paint things with it, and you'll probably be fine. Liter can actually kill people on its own, so, yeah, that's good. That's kind of where we're at. Things are more self-sufficient, so there's less synergies. There's less opportunity to work together in the traditional sense, and VAC 96 is kind of the only heavily coordination-dependent weapon in the meta right now. Like, even a support weapon like Tri-Slosher is fairly self-sufficient. You will shark in and go for picks, or you will paint the map, or you will throw fizzy bombs, or you will prevent people from walking in. All of those are things you can do basically on your own as long as you know how to position around your team. You don't really need to combo off anything. If you get in, you're going to kill the opponent, and same for like everything else. The other factor that makes everything self-sufficient is there is so much HP right now. We got rid of Crab, like, I guess, which is something, but like, Wall is pretty fast to deploy on the 52. When we talk about Roller, it's got Bubble. Bubble is also really fast to deploy, and on Blaster it cancels its end lag, so, you know, you can also just use this, and you can also summon a barrier. Now I can't change specials for 15 seconds. They changed Triple Splashdown, which is used on the custom Blaster, so now that's harder to kill as well, because Splashdown is invincible 10 frames sooner. It won't kill as often, but it will keep people alive. And then there's Ink Vacuum, which, yes, its HP is nerfed, but it will still also keep people alive. And then the backline of the team is sitting far away from everybody else. So there is now a lot of tanking in this game instead of actual mobility, and that might be the pattern you've noticed, right? We aren't talking about weapons that move around the map very much. We're talking about weapons that have the ability to tank. And there's going to be like a lot of swim speed ran on these weapons, but it's, you know, it's not to play like how a dually would play, for instance. Right? There's less comboing. So everything's more self-sufficient. Everything's closer range. When every one of the good weapons can get in, they can't fuck up, and they all have a lot of HP. Is there any other downsides to this? Yes, pulling as a concept is, like, way weaker now. So, again, before when we had the concept of mid-range meta and, like, those kind of fighting weapons, the ability to pull opponents was really important. You wanted people to be lined up in the correct spots for your mid-range weapons to do their thing, regardless of what they were. And also, a lot of these mid-range weapons were slower to some extent. Mid-charge slash is slower, or range blaster end lag, or S-blast end lag, or whatever, right? A lot of them were either slower or had strict positioning requirements, you know, certain range values or spots in the map where they would do really well. And so the ability to funnel opponents properly, to run along the map and try to set up the right positions for a fight, became really important, especially if you played a weapon that wasn't one of these. If you were like the Splash-O-Matic of the group, right, your job wasn't to sit back, you were probably one of the few weapons with good mobility on the comp. So, like, your job was to kind of run around and help set up the fight positions properly and, you know, utilize that to win the day. You know, that pulling is, like, almost impossible now. Like, it doesn't never happen. It's still important, but it comes with a big risk because, again, if you get too close to, like, every good weapon right now, you will die, and they cannot... It's not like an S-Blast that might miss their direct, you know, or a Squeezer that, you know, could miss their shots if you get up close or something. These weapons aren't going to mess up. They are very difficult to mess up. If you get too close to a try, you are going to die, like, 9 times out of 10, right? It's weapons that, once they're in the right position, the mechanical execution requirement is just not as bad as it was before. I could go on. There's kind of like paint spam as well, so that's kind of annoying. But that's kind of where we're at right now. A lot of the, you know, more skill-dependent weapons to a certain extent were toned back. And I think there is merit in having weapons that, like, you know, kind of punish heavy movement stuff or allow, you know, close-range weapons to thrive. I'm not saying short range is inherently bad for the game by any means, right? And I'm not saying there isn't skill in, like, having a weapon like Roller where you have to get in a certain range value to do your thing. You know, like, all of that is fine. The tuning is just off. Mobility is too weak. Midlines are too weak. A lot of the close-range weapons have things that are a bit too strong. HP in general kind of needs to be toned back because the numbers on it are ridiculous. You know, VAC has 1100 HP. That's kind of more okay. Wall still has 800. That's been stupid for a while. Bubble has 2400. That's also quite ridiculous, right? Stuff like that, you know, not looking great. And then, oh yeah, specials. Outside of all the tanking specials, there's also not a lot of skill requirement in a lot of the specials that are good right now. They're usually pretty basic. That's been a problem for a while, but hey, I almost forgot about it. So yeah, because of that, having tanking tools to exist on the map and using the right specials to get in and heavily depending on paint control to flush out where these enemies are, or running things that can break the wall and bubble, all that is where we're at, you know? Like, Stringer can break bubble really easily, or wall really easily. Bucket's pretty good at DPSing bubble, stuff like that. You know, that becomes kind of more important too. So it's more than just what weapons are good. It is the game is just played differently in a way that I find less interesting. Some people have said this is the worst meta. I'd like to remind everyone that Zuka used to be a panic button with a hitbox the size of the moon, and we used to run like 2 to 3 of them. That was probably worse. We've had crab meta, and like, you know, crab meta underrated, I'll say. Not as bad as people say. It did have a lot of interesting things about it. Maybe a topic for its own video one day. But come on, it's 3 splashes in a machine or 2 splashes in 2 machine. I can't give it that much credit, you know? Is it worse than what we've had for the past, like, 2 to 3 years? Yes. Is it very depressing because these problems should be avoidable, and how are we stuck with the 52 again? Also, yes. So, you know, that's where we're at. A lot of people are playing the meta right now because the last patch didn't do enough to fix it, so even if it's weaker, well, you know, we're not getting another one for at least 3 months, so just might as well give in and just play the meta. Bans are being talked about. That'll be a fun discussion to happen again. If you want my opinion, take out 52, take out Blaster, remove Respawn Punisher to make leader more even with the others in this environment, and hope and pray that midlines become worth picking again. Will anyone do that? Who knows? We got Riptide and SQ Major coming up, so for the time being, probably not. Alright, bye everybody!